a flat form and a form that is a vertical form. And that's because it's going to create challenges for you in your printing as far as your silkscreen. How many of you have silkscreen on t-shirts before? Anybody? Few? Yeah, if you've done silkscreen before, I promise this is easier. That's the nicest thing about silkscreen with the ceramic is it's a super, super easy process. So this is a sample of a cup I have started. What I'm doing, you're going to be creating a theme. The two pieces that you make will have to be a set. They will have to go together. This is going to be my dragon theme. So I've got the scale texture here. I just took one of the new wooden stamps and stamped that. And then I rolled a little bit of the dragon scale texture over here on the side. And I've left myself plenty of surface for the dragon silk screen that will eventually be applied over here. What I'll probably make to go with this one, I will probably put a handle on this one. It'll probably go over here. Then I'll probably make a plate instead of just a single coaster for this. So I've got a set that I can actually use. That makes sense. But again, the minimum would be a flat coaster. You need a good smooth surface, so you can. Most of you are probably going to find that this is easier to do in slab construction. But if you are capable, and Kayla, I'll use you as an example. If you're capable of coil building and getting that surface ribbed down to smooth, so that it looks like this, you absolutely can coil build your forms. It does not matter to me. Most of you, the plate, platter, coaster, whatever you end up building will be some form of slab drape, I'm assuming. Okay, so the idea behind this is what you're going to be doing. We're going to build, construct in greenware. We are using B-mix clay because of the type of process and the printing that we're going to be doing. You have to have some type of a texture that is recessed enough that we'll be able to paint color on and wipe it off in the bisque stage. So the construction for these forms, the greenware, the two pieces are due the Thursday before spring break, which gives you tomorrow, all of next week when your turn isn't on the wheel, or when you're not in the demo with me on Monday, and then the following week, those 4 days before spring break, which these are fairly simple forms. Keep these within manageable sizes because you're going to end up the final project for this class, the equivalent of the Ceramics 1 exam project. You're going to build another set or series, and you're going to pull from all of the tools. So far we've covered Sgraffito, we've covered the altered slab techniques, which wasn't surface, but Sgraffito, we've done the marbling, staining, texture, flood and wipe, silk screen with this one, and we still have slip trail, paper and tape resist, and the coil carved flood and wipe, but that's with glaze instead of just with underglaze. You will have to present your design to me before you will be allowed to start the project. The issue is going to be the only days you can present your design to me are either tomorrow or the following week, which would put you having only 4 days to build, unless you come in after school, or you can pop in during 4th and 5th lunch, and I'd be happy to look at them. I cannot do it during class at all next week because on Monday, everybody's going to come back with me to the wheels. I'm going to demonstrate throwing, and then the group sign up Monday or Tuesday through Friday. I will literally start class back there. The people who are on the wheel with me have to come in right away. We'll be prepping the clay the day before. I won't even be able to answer many questions that day. Okay, so you're fine. Just throw the note down and join us. So again, cup and plate form. Once it is bisque fired, what you will end up doing, I'm going to grab one of my. So this is a plate that's in process. I was playing around with, and it's a demo plate, so who knows will it ever get finished. Got the little kitty stamp, and I've got this little stamp that I had back there. To me, it looked like the little cutout mouse hole, very cartoons, Tom and Jerry. I just dated myself by saying that. And then my little horizon line, and I'm going to probably finish. I'll go back. I was going to do some really gaudy 1970s wallpaper or something in the background for this. So a lot of this stuff, like this blue, is not fired on. It's going to be able to be wiped off. I forgot to give myself water, so I'm just going to use some of my spray bottle water. So for the flood and wipe, that's going to be the first thing that happens at the bisque stage when it comes out of the kiln. You will have the option, if you wanted to, of using what we call sticker resist or tape resist. So if I wanted to create stripes in the background, instead of having to hand paint those individual stripes, I can actually take just your basic masking tape. The painter's tape works a little bit better than this stuff, the blue stuff. But if I wanted to create stripes in the background, I can tape this off. So, you know, create my series of stripes. We'll just do 2 for demo purposes because I can wash all this off. The green that is on here was I taped a line, and this has been fired on, so that green is permanent. It will not wash off. The green, if you want to fire color on in between steps so that you have the freedom to change your mind, how's that up here? Anyways, the low fire shelf in the kiln room that many of you may have put your pieces if they were cracked or broken on. When you walk in the kiln room, there's a blue sign on your left shoulder as you walk in the door. That low fire shelf is also for baking on underglaze to make it permanent. So if I go in here, I've taped off my little line, I'm gonna flood my kitty at the same time. I'll probably end up washing this out because I don't know how I feel about a blue cat, but we'll work with it for now. Soaking wet. So the idea for your flood and wipe or your resist, so for the resist, I'm just going to go in and paint my blue underglaze. And then here, I'm just going to overload. I think I'll even do the line. Overload underglaze. I usually do 2 to 3 coats of underglaze. For the demo purposes, I'm just going to do 1 so you guys can see it because I can always go back and flood more. If you can get a lot of underglaze to pool in the space, you can get away with 1. I've also got little paw prints around here, little mouse prints that I can also flood and wipe. So I would go in again, put all that color in there, and then once the underglaze is dry, using a clean bowl of water, I'm gonna move this over so I don't have a chance to knock it over. Clean bowl of water and one of the small yellow sponges. You're gonna wring all of the water out of the sponge, and then if you wipe over the surface, you'll notice every time I wipe, I rotate the sponge and find a new surface. I can leave behind color in the crevices, so I have, this is what we're talking about when we talk about flood and wipe. The sponge, if it's too wet, you can even wipe a little bit out of the surface. This is unfortunately on the 306 brown clay, so I may go back and even color that surface too. But I can get this surface pretty clean and leaving the color behind so you don't have to be as detailed about your color, okay? So in here, around the cat, and I can do multiple flood and wipe layers. So I could do him in blue, fire that on, go in and paint the little stripes if I want to get super detailed. Again, like I said, I'm not sure how I feel about a blue cat right now, but it's not a permanent piece and it's a demo. But you can see the flood and wipe. I can keep going back and cleaning the surface, and I can get it relatively clean. So this is the flood and wipe stage. You can either choose to go to the silk screen immediately after, or you can fire this color on. Either way, I'll pull the tape so you can see it. You really should wait until your tape is, or your underglaze is dry. And I didn't push down really hard, so it bled. Normally the line is very, very straight, so it's not permanent. I'll pull the one where the sticker was. You can see it's a little bit better. If you really take the time to put the tape down and use the right tape, the whatchamacallit, you get much, much straighter lines. Straighter lines like you see there. Okay, so after you do your flood and wipe, that's when you're gonna do your silk screen. So the silk screens, and I'm gonna go through these here in a minute with all of you guys, are organized all in this book. I have the dragon print out, and I'm going to use this one that's dry now. But each of the silk screens, the only bummer for this company is the picture that you see here is smaller than what the actual silk screen is going to be. So you can't go by your space here. So I think there's a little cartoon mouse on one of the pages that I would probably print up here, maybe build up a shelf or something, like the cat's waiting for the mouse and then the mouse is actually sitting there watching the cat, or whatever story you want to tell. You're creating some kind of visual imagery, and what's on your platter plate needs to work with what's on the cup. They are a set, so they should work together. Does that make sense? It doesn't have to be identical stamps. Like I have that cat on this one, but I could use maybe this kitty on the cup instead of using that one again if I wanted to. I could also do the same stamp again. So for the silk screen, what I'll do, yeah, I'm going to print right over the cat here. So I'm going to print a dragon right on top of my pencil. I think I can wipe most of it off so you don't see it as badly. The pencil will burn anyways. So what I'm going to do, I'll set this up here real quick. Right here's the silk screen medium. When I bought this stuff, I had no clue. It was brand new to the market, and I had no idea how much I was going to need. So I bought like 6 containers of that stuff. Had this for 4 or 5 years now, and that's all the only container we've had to open. And you can see how much is still in there. When you see how much I add to it, you'll understand why what I have over there is going to last me the rest of my teaching career, and probably then some. We have a variety of little plates over in the room. Just something that's a fairly flat surface. It's a little obnoxious to have this ring in the center, but it won't be too big of an issue. I'm going to scoop out a little bit of underglaze onto the plate. Depending on the size of your print, about a quarter dollop of underglaze will be more than enough. The first year I did this, I had a student that filled that center area with underglaze, and we had like a pile of pudding that he was able to use for his printing ink. Everybody in the class could use it, and then we had to wash the rest of it down the drain because this stuff can't be stored. It dries out and it's no good. So the day you can make up ink, print that day, but then whatever is left at the end of the day you have to wash down the drain. So please be smart about what you put out, especially once you see the demo. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my silkscreen medium, take a pinch, and what I'm doing is I'm literally sprinkling. I want to cover the blue underglaze with this powder, which I laugh is probably just cornstarch, and I'm a sucker, but Mako packaged it. It says silkscreen medium. So I want to put a little bit more out so I have enough that mostly covers the color. Everybody see that? Okay. Then you're going to take a palette knife, which I have a whole bunch of little plastic palette knives up here. On the Mako website, they're very specific about how long you're supposed to mix it. I don't think time matters as much as the proper consistency, because if I sit here for 5 minutes and don't do anything, it doesn't matter how long I sat here. It's the act of mixing. What you're doing is you're going to mix that medium and the underglaze together to make it the consistency of toothpaste, creamy peanut butter, thick Greek yogurt, pudding. If any of those items don't, you all should know what toothpaste looks like. If you don't, we need to talk. But what you can see, look how thick the underglaze has gotten already, but it looks really sandy and gritty right now, and I want to get it to a really nice creamy consistency. So I'm going to keep folding and pressing my palette knife into the material. What you're trying to do is dissolve the silkscreen medium so that it looks super, super smooth. So I have found sometimes it takes me 30 seconds if I'm not being real vigorous, and sometimes it only takes me 15 to 20, just depending. If you don't mix it well enough, if your underglaze is too wet, your image will bleed. And if your underglaze ink is too dry, it won't print. So you want it to be a little wet to the touch. So this is really good. It's really nice and creamy. I don't see the little sandy grits anymore. It's not dripping off of my palette knife, but it's wet enough that it's wiping off really easy. Okay, so that makes sense. And again, Mako's very specific about how much time you spend. I'm more of a, does it look right? Will it behave the way it needs to? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take my dragon print. What you will notice is there is a shiny side that's very, very smooth. And then there's a side that doesn't look as shiny, and it's got a bit of a texture to it. If you have really dry hands like I do, you can actually feel your dry skin moving across it. It's kind of a toothy texture. You can even hear it. That's the tooth. From that side, you need the shiny side down, textured side up for printing. That texture is going to catch the underglaze. I have the woman I buy my clay from printed it the other way, and it works, but you have to be careful because I've noticed it's very prone to bleeding if you try to reverse it. Because I have people like, but I want the dragon to be facing this way. You can try it, but if it bleeds, you can wash it off and start and print it the right way. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay my dragon in here. It's kind of hard to see the image. If you hold it up to the light, that was too much. You can, when you're holding it, you can see the ghosted image of the figure. When it's down against the plate, I think it's a little bit easier to see once we start printing the underglaze. But you kind of get an idea for what your design's going to look like. I do recommend making a little test form to print on. You can make a simple little tile and print it on. We can even do a tile per table that we fire. It's a lot of times why I save the Oops Graffito tiles, because we can use these as test prints. I just got to send those through the kiln so they'll get fired. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of the underglaze on my finger. I usually start from the center of my print. That way, if it's got to go up on a curve, it doesn't crinkle. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to spread this out with my finger. I'm going to take my paste and I'm going to start circular motion, pushing the underglaze through the screen. So when I talked about those of you who've done silk screen before, if you've actually had to silk screen on fabric, you know the issue of like, oh no, I've got to get this lined up, and you got one shot and it's ink, and this is so much more forgiving. So as I'm printing, I'm just trying to force the underglaze through. Some people are like, well, how long do you do it for? It's not, again, a matter of time as it is getting enough underglaze through so that everything prints. So I'm looking, I see his little toes down here. So I'm making sure I spread the underglaze ink through there. I think I've got both feet. And then I'm going to start working up on his tail. So you can see that little bit of underglaze is more than enough to print this one. If you're going to do multiple prints, you might make up a little bit more, but you saw how little I put out and I'm almost done with my print. Getting a little funky going the tail up the curve of the plate, but yikes, it peeled. There we go. So even though that just moved on me, I think I'll be okay because it went right back down to where it was supposed to be. Okay. You can also do ombre blends. So if you wanted this to fade from blue to green, you just make a little bit of green paste, a little bit of blue paste, and kind of work yourself together. The blend is super, super easy because these prints are so fine and detailed that you don't have to really think about it. If you do literally split it in half, it's going to read as a blend because of how the ink prints. Okay, so you can see what it looks like now. What you can do to test to make sure you've got a good print is I'll pull up a corner and check. If I feel like it's faint or I missed a spot, I'm going to hit the tip of his nose one more time. Looks like I missed a little bit of it. There we go. So as we pull it up, and you can tell everybody you drew that. You don't have to tell them it was just a print. You'll be like, look how awesome I am. Yes, I totally drew that. So the idea behind the print, the other nice thing about this, unlike your silk screens with ink, which if you let the ink dry, that silk screen is toast. This one is underglaze. What happens when I get underglaze wet again? It reactivates, exactly. So what I usually do to wash these out is I go over to the sink, and you can usually pull 2 or 3 prints as long as your underglaze isn't too dry. I could put that on something else and print again. I usually get 2 or 3 prints, depending, and I'll take this over to the sink and I'll just run water over it. I usually take a sponge or run my hands between my hands. And then to dry it, please take it between paper towel and blot it. The first year we had this, I had somebody that put it in paper towel and then went like this and crinkled it and created a million little folds, which was fabulous. So I'm just gonna let that sit in the water for a second while I clean off my Smurf hands and show you what you have for options. So I'm gonna do the book. Please don't take the prints out and walk away from the book unless you're actively going to try them on something. And you can test print on anything if you want to. It doesn't just have to be this. Again, the B-Mix though is the best is because it shows up really well. As far as colors are concerned, the dark colors print fine. Black, dark blue, the really dark purple that we have, the dark green, the browns, the red, the dark oranges print fine. When I found the yellows, chartreuse, pale pinks and whatnot, and I think the some of the lighter purples just don't show up real well once you put a clear coat over them. They just kind of fade and disappear. But that will show up really nice and bold. So we're going to go through the collection real quick just so you can see them, so you can start thinking about what textures, what imagery you want to use. So we have, everybody see if I stand like this? I kind of go like that. All right. Yeah. We have forest animals, birds. We have insects and giant arachnid. cute little cartoon animals. Cats. Dragons. That one's missing because the first year I had it, somebody lost it, and we never found it. I have them on order. I don't know if it'll be in time. The nice thing is most of you won't be printing until the first or second week after spring break. Llamas. With little llama sayings. Sea life. More sea life. More seafaring items.
So much better being organized.
Flowers. More flowers. Leaves. Batman. I don't know what else to call that. Batman symbol.
Comic.
Like comic. There you go. Thank you. Scrolls. Southwest. I'll actually show you a set where I've used the lizards. Like diamond facet line work illustrations. Kind of a stylized set of imagery. More stylized kind of imagery. Bird cage, bird stuff. Vintage 1920s, 1930s kind of work. More stylized imagery. Halloween. There are more of these available, and if you don't see something you like, here are the options. Because we aren't doing the printing until probably mid-April, if you would like to see what other ones are available, I will pull up the Mako site and you can look at the rest. I know there's like mermaids, unicorns, there's dogs, there's all kinds of, there's ones I think is just like lines, but you can also do custom. If you choose to do a custom one, I'm going to let you deal with that on your own. The nice thing is this company is in Columbus. This is Mako, and they're based in Columbus. One of my friends who's a potter will either contact them via email, or a lot of times she's driven up to Columbus so she can talk to them about sizing. So you can take any good high quality black and white image, photo, and they can make a silk screen of it for you. So if you're interested in that, it's not something I'm going to handle because I'm at my limit of what I can handle as far as all the responsibilities and things I have to do, but there is the possibility of doing custom imagery as well if you're interested. Once you make the screen, you have the screen as long as you take care of the screen. So it could last you forever. So just FYI, those are options. Again, please help take care of the screen, so those are available for everybody. I'm going to show you just a couple. This is probably so here's a plate that is in process. This is the silk screen, but I went back with the Mako designer liners, a white one of these, because I wanted to create some dimension. So I took a white Mako designer liner and went back over it in places just to give it more depth. So, and I'm in the process of flooding. This design here was done with paper resist while the clay was at leather hard stage, and then these are tape resist on bisque. If you're interested in the resist techniques, we are doing a project specifically with resist, but if it works with your design and you want to see that, let me know. And I'm not bound to any of this stuff. If you want to pick it up and look at it, you're more than welcome to. This is a sample of the simplest. You could go, and actually had two coasters that this was a test coaster one of my students made a few years ago. The little bubbles are her flood and wipe, obviously, and then the octopus, and then she ended up making her final was a plate, I think, with a cup. So this is the basic. I had two different size coasters. There's the smaller coaster, larger coaster, and you can see I did there's an ombre effect in the pattern with turquoise and medium blue, and then the lizards are printed in blue, and then this is the cup that goes with it. I just haven't printed the lizard on the side yet. That's going to happen probably, who knows, the next 10 years or something. I even decided on the inside of the cup, there's texture in there. I'll probably do a flood and wipe. I may do a celadon, which is one of the colored glazes in here. I'll probably underglaze the handles so it brings out some of the color from this. But then the outside will most likely just be clear glaze, so that the pattern and the design really shows up. So that's the basic. Your cup can be minus a handle if you don't want to mess with the handle for this one. Because I want to get you guys through the techniques, you learn the process, and then again, ultimately, the final project for the semester, you're going to build a set or a series of things that are related, and you're going to be pulling from techniques that we've done in class. Tomorrow, I can entertain design ideas to approve you to go forward. You cannot start this project until I see your design idea. It could be simply like, all right, Adams, here's the texture I'm going to use, and I'm going to use like one of the stamps to go with this, and then that's the silk screen. And that's the design idea, and then I'm going to put it on a plate and a bowl. One more. Oh, thank you. There they are. Hiding stuff from myself. These are those really, really fancy paper plates that you can buy at Kroger. I have a whole box of them. They make circles. There's the oval, and then there's the square. And these work just like the plaster molds, where you can make your slab, drape it over, cut off the edge, and you have a really nice plate. And again, because they're Chinette, it's funny, you'll actually get the Chinette print on the bottom. If you don't like it, you can smooth it out, or you can leave it, whatever. I need to get more of the squares, so if you think you are interested in this, let me know. I have a package of them, but I find that to do a good drape, I usually use 2 at a time, so they're just sturdy enough to support the weight of the clay. Once the plate has been used, you can see this one's all gross and warped. Once it's been used to drape clay, it's not going to be good anymore because it starts to get wet and distort, and this one's trash. I just saved it for demo purposes. But those are also available as far as options. If you don't want something just coaster size, if you'd rather a plate, okay? And again, the GR pottery forms, those work. You might have to watch with some of the smaller ones. You may not be able to fit enough of your design on to be able to use that. However, you are not required. If I had wanted to, especially on that cup, if I couldn't fit my whole dragon on there and I didn't want the whole dragon, I can print just his head coming up from the bottom if I wanted to. So you just have to have silk screen. If the silk screen you want part of it, not the whole thing, you can print part of the silk screen, and that would be okay as long as it works with the design. It doesn't just look like you like half printed it. So as long as it's intentional, you're fine. Thank you for awesome.